going to get started here in just a moment. We still have some people coming in, so we want to give the Zoom room a moment to populate. Also, as you come in, your microphone is muted, so please leave your microphone on mute until you are prompted in the chat box to unmute and share the questions. All right, so we do anticipate that there will be other individuals joining this morning, so we may have to repeat these directions at some point a little bit further in our program, but welcome to the Pontiac Transportation Museum and Midwest Fiero Clubs Fieros at 40 series, and we're really delighted to welcome our very first participant in that series, Mr. John Schinella. I'm going to give Fred the opportunity to tell us a little bit more about John and his role in the Fiero project. And of course, we'll be hearing extensively from John himself about the role that he played. But we just wanted to start by sharing a couple of session ground rules for our work together this morning. First of all, this session in just a moment is going to be recorded. So just so everyone is aware of that. You can choose whether or not you wish to turn your cameras off, but we are again asking that your sound, your microphones, please stay on mute throughout this morning's program, as we would like to continue to utilize this recording in posterity, and no one needs to hear you yelling at your dog. Next, we had many individuals who submitted questions in advance for today's program, and we're really excited to share those questions with John. A few of the questions that were submitted are actually better suited to other members of the Fiero project, which we will be featuring throughout the year. So we will be holding some of those questions about various other aspects of the Fiero that did not fall directly under John's purview for those later sessions. So if we don't prompt you to ask one of those questions, you know, don't worry, they are definitely being held for the person that will be best suited to answer them. On the right-hand side of your Zoom screen, under the participant list, you should be able to see your meeting chat, and if not, at the toolbar on the bottom of your screen or the top of your screen, wherever your toolbar is located, you should have the ability to illuminate the chat feature. For those of you that previously submitted questions in the chat, we will say something like, Fred, you are up next with your question, and we will share the question that you asked and then give you the opportunity to share that question with Mr. Schinella. If you did not pre-submit a question, but a question pops up in your mind during the session, please feel free to input that into the chat, and we will give you the opportunity when it is possible or fits with the flow of the presentation to pose that question. Of course, we anticipate other questions will come up as we're going on through the presentation. And all that we ask is that you please keep your questions succinct and make sure that they specifically fit with the Fiero design project that John was a part of. So we're not looking at questions today specifically on engine or other aspects of the Fiero project that are not directly related to design. Also, as Peter shared in the chat box, if somebody does not have the ability to pose their own question due to technology limitations on your end, just let me know, and I will be more than happy to share that question out loud for you. And so we are getting ready to begin. Fred, are you set on your end?
I am certainly ready to go.
Then I am going to begin the recording. Here we go.
Recording in progress.
And here we go. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Pontiac Transportation Museum. It's a balmy 60 degrees here. Could be a little warmer. Thank you. I sit here with John Schinella. It is a honor and a privilege to be able to sit down with the gentleman who produced and shaped a lot of the products that we're used to seeing from the Pontiac brand. So say hello to everybody, John.
Hi, everybody. Welcome today. Let's have some fun. Ask some good questions.
Yep. John is open to about any question related to Fiero today. I know he's got a lot of background with a lot of the Pontiacs that were produced through the 70s and 80s and into the 90s. But we're going to concentrate on Fiero today. We got to give the Fiero some love today.
You bet.
So you all relaxed, ready to go?
I'm
I
ready
feel
to go.
pretty good.
Are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
Good. Let's go.
So John Schinella was the manager of Pontiac Exterior to Studio. Right. Correct on that. So you were more emphasized on the production side of the designs.
Right. And what's interesting is sometimes they do advanced theme models. And on the Fiero, there was a theme. There were some themes that were done. And of course, there was a lot of whispering going on that we shouldn't have this car. And when we finally got the basic theme or philosophy, we had to make some changes. We had to fix the front end and we had to fix the cockpit. We made the windshield faster. We did a lot of things to it to make it more Pontiac, even more than it was. And that was a great challenge. And but we were given the edict. This is supposed to be like for a young lady who's a secretary to drive back and forth to work, sort of an efficient car to drive. But that was kind of hilarious because Pontiac builds sports cars, fun cars, shapely cars. And so we tippy-toed through this to make it as sporty as we could.
So you talked about the leading up to your work. Ron Hill did the first work on doing a concept Fiero with Smoky team.
Right.
Did you have any input at that point, or were you kind of still in the dark?
No, we knew that it was coming, or hoping that it would get approved. When it finally got approved, that philosophy came upstairs. And then we were to make it true Pontiac.
So there has been reference that your studio was invaded at some point in the early days of Ron Hill doing the clay box for the concept Fiero. Do you recall any part of that story?
I don't know about invasion, but when it was decided that we were going to have it and the program was approved, we had to make it Pontiac for production. And we made a lot of changes, not because the car wasn't right, it wasn't as Pontiac as it could have been. And that's why you'll see the total change in the car, and its proportions were important, also for aerodynamics and for appeal, and to make this Pontiac more graphically.
So noted from back conversations with Holke, when the program first started, they were attempting to mock Ford with the Ford EXP and utilizing a current platform. So in the case of the Fiero, they started with the J car platform, the Chevy Cavalier, and Holke made some minor attempts at making that a two-place sports car, and naturally the proportions were completely out of bounds. Right. So that got shelved, and Ron Hill came into the picture, and they started making a platform.
Right.
So, according to the official record, April 16th, 1980, General Motors management approved the P car. That went from ideas to an actual building prototypes and starting the actual design process for production parts. And also, according to the official record, April 24th, 1980, you were handed the project, the P car project, and started making your changes, right?
And I remember the vice president at that time came down to the studio to talk to me in the office, and he said, "John, I know there's a lot of vibes going out there about, an economy car and for this and for that." He said, "But this has to be a Pontiac." And I said, "I know. We're going to make it a Pontiac." And that's where we started.
Jen, do we have anybody up with questions?
We sure do. I know that John Bakey is with us this morning, and he had a question for us about the Fiero having Ferrari-esque elements. And John, that question is in the chat box now. If you would, if you need to read off of it, but it is your question. So if you'd like to unmute and share, please do so at this time, or we can pose the question for you.
Thank you, Jen. Can you hear me, by the way?
We sure can.
Yes, we sure can.
I've lost my video. I'm assuming that everything else, I have a tenuous connection here, so
There
I
you are.
apologize.
Very good. Look at that.
So here's my question. I'm the original owner of an 86.5 GT. The and a half is because that was when they had introduced mid-model year, the 5-speed. And the one thing I've always wondered about when I scrutinize the style of the Fiero GT, there's so many Ferrari-esque elements, but the one that I've missed is, unlike the Ferrari 308 and unlike the 208 Dino, there's no curved rear window. It's a flat piece of glass. And a couple years after the demise of the Fiero, even the second generation Toyota MR2 has this beautiful curved rear window. And I'm wondering, was that simply an oversight, or was it consciously omitted as a cost-cutting reason by the Fiero designers?
That would be financial, making those kind of decisions. But we stayed with the glass flat, worked just fine for us, didn't need the curves, and we were happy with it.
Jen, may I ask another question, or should I wait for a different time during this interview?
Proceed. Continue.
Still within the topic of design, John, I realize that this is a story that has been bandied about many times with books about the Fiero, and you were very tactful a moment ago in saying that the desire from above was that the P car be more of a secretary's car, while you and your team wanted to make it a Pontiac. So my question is, can you sort of elaborate what was the disagreement or the tension that might have existed between the corporate brass and Pontiac? How much of what Pontiac originally hoped to do had to be scaled back, at least for the original 83, 84 Fieros? Because there's also been written that the corporate brass were afraid that had you been given free rein, it would have merely been stealing sales from Corvette rather than bringing in non-General Motors customers.
Well, we heard some of that, and you never want to hold an Italian back. We have free-spirited people. And if you see what we did, first thing we did was shorten the nose, because why would you have a long nose on a mid-engine car? And that was one of the major things in proportions that we wanted to get. Excuse me, have a little cold. And we proceeded, once we got going, people that were watching us didn't have a lot to say. They just were pretty much approving, thinking this felt into those guidelines that they had sent us. And of course, we knew with wheels and colors, and eventually we could make changes to make this car even more sporty looking. And I know, because I was a part of Corvette back in the day, the 68 Corvette, and I'm very partial to Corvettes. But you know what? There's no way this car was going to compete with a Corvette. Different performance, different proportions, different looks. And the way I thought about it, it was our chance to do a affordable sporty car that would compete in that brand of the market, whereas a Corvette competes in a higher brand. 2 cars could certainly fit. That was in my eye, and I think a lot of the people in Pontiac felt the same way. By the way, I see you have
You
a special jacket on, don't you? Are you military?
Oh, yeah. In fact, I'm doing my monthly AT right now. I had to sneak away to attend this. Um, I'll
John, thank
give
you.
you a real compliment here. I'm fortunate to have several cars in my private collection. Compliment here. I'm fortunate to have several cars, classic cars, and one of which is a 75 Eldorado. And of all the automobiles that I have, believe it or not, none of them give a 6'2" guy as much legroom as the passenger side of my Fiero. It's absolutely incredible. I can put that seat back, and 6'2" of me, and I do not touch the firewall. It's just an amazing bit of design that such a small car would have so much legroom.
Well, you know that Hulky and I conversed on this. We wanted to have seating for a tall person, a lot of leg room to make sure that people would be comfortable in it. Because a lot of times cars are made, but they're not comfortable. Yet this was a small car, but had a nice cockpit to it, nice size, nice feeling inside to sit in it, ride in it. It was great. And then we had to have room, I think it was in the back, even for golf clubs, and some room up front. So we had 2 areas for storing things.
John and Jen, thank you. I've taken more than my fair share of time.
Thank you, John, and thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We've got a whole bunch of great questions, but one has just been posed by Ken Brown that kind of fits along with this line of thinking of the kind of initial start of the car and some of the challenges with finances. So Ken, if you are able, please feel free to come on camera, and I see you are.
Am I okay? Okay.
Morning,
Hi,
Ken.
hi guys.
Morning.
Oh, there I am. Oh,
Yeah,
as
there you
bad
are.
as I thought. I've been out shoveling snow this morning. Sorry.
No, where
lucky
are
you.
you? Where is
I'm in Aurora, Illinois.
Illinois?
My question had to do with how much concern there was as you guys were going through the design process as to what would and would not get past the accounting / bean counters. It just seems like there's a lot of great ideas, a lot of great innovation that went into the Fiero. And when it came time to actually implement it, it seems like the cost cutters got in there and just cut it all down. And I was just curious if you were able to design with impunity as you were working through both the first and second generation cars.
Well, to be really honest, I didn't feel a lot of limitations because Pontiac wanted to have a great car. I didn't see bean counters coming in and saying, you can't do this and you can't do that, because if you see the car the way it came out, it looked complete. It didn't look like it was missing stuff. We didn't need to add more stuff to the car originally. And I think that they kind of left us alone because they saw the car developing. They felt it looked great. It had the right thing for Pontiac. And I didn't feel any cost cutting coming on. Maybe it happened, but I never saw that.
That is a great question.
That's a good question, yeah.
Because
Because I was responsible for other Pontiacs, we had a lot of people counting numbers. And this one, they didn't bother us. They liked what we did, and it was affordable.
So I guess I was thinking as much on the mechanical side, which I realized that you weren't so much a part of, but to end up with the Chevette front end and the X-Car rear end, was that a compromise from your where you were at, or that...
Not in the proportions, because the proportions worked out fine once we shortened the nose and worked on the other areas, a faster windshield, different cockpit shapes for more room. No, didn't hurt at all. It worked out fine, to be honest.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
So as a side note to that conversation, we do have the resources of talking to the people that did that work that was subject to, revisions and so forth from the original design. And we will feature those in future episodes of our series. Very good.
All right. Our next question, Peter Zurich is unable to unmute himself, but he had a series of questions related specifically to design. And the first one that I'd like to pose to you, John, for Peter is, was there a particular spark that started the GT design fork? And was the decision to keep the offering alongside the GT a standard, predictable, low risk strategy to grow the sales numbers?
The GT version, I don't remember when that was introduced.
1986,
We're
the
not
fast.
talking about the faster line.
So I'm assuming probably the fastback GT versus the 85 GT.
1986.
Yeah. Well, the part of that vehicle that was designed was done as Jay Wetzel and Hulky and myself were talking about we need a sportier look. And we did it, and design staff designed it. They cast the pieces, and then they went up to Pontiac and they built a car to look at. And then we took it to the proving grounds, and we painted Porsche yellow. And it's the best part of the story to me is we're standing in this area where there's a circular track around where we were standing. And this was to have cars out driving around, then come in and evaluate the way they look, and then observe them at speeds on the track. So we were there with Hoagland and the team, and Jay Wetzel, myself, Byron Warner, the whole team was there. And we're talking about Fiero. We're looking at the normal Fiero. And the yellow car was driving around outside, and Hoagland looked up at one moment and said, wow, they must be testing a Porsche. So he thought it was a Porsche running around, but we all laughed inside and said, he's up for a surprise. And then the driver of that car drove it right into where we were standing. And Hoagland looked down. He said, that's our car. We need to make that, put it into production. Can we do that, Jay Wetzel? And that's where the spark hit.
Here's the car.
There's the car. Yeah. He's just showing me the car in the book. Right.
You guys can see, but this is the picture.
So this gave us a chance to move the needle to be more sporty and more fun.
Awesome. So Peter also had a second question that related to design changes, and that is, were there any specific design influences to what eventually became the 88 formula? Of course, we know the preliminary started with the 87 coupe, but the sportier 88 version in the formula.
Formula was a stock body coupe that received the V6 and the GT mechanicals. So basically, it was a Fiero GT in a coupe body.
Yeah. No, not really.
Yeah. I think more in line with what that question concerns is it was more of a marketing strategy with that car to be able to offer the performance aspects of an 88 Fiero without having the cost of the full option, the GT.
And that's like even the Firebird data formula. And that was the same rationale we used there. So it's very similar rationale.
So the window sticker on an 88 formula was about $2,500 less than a fully optioned Fiero GT.
All right. And so Peter also asked to elaborate a little more on why was the original coupe design kept in production after the GT design was created?
They have two models that look differently for the public's taste.
Okay. Also kind of along these lines, and then I'm going to come back to a question that Peter and Anthony Magnoli had, is Ken, you have one about the consideration for a black and gold edition. So I'll let you unmute and ask that question for us.
Okay, thanks. My question is pretty simple, but given the era back then, was there ever any thought to doing a black and gold version of a Fiero along with a Pegasus on the hood, like the SE Trans Ams back in the day?
Good question. Not really. But we were probably focusing more on getting the new car that we did not get to do more things and elaborate the differences. Because if you see the designs of those two cars on the drill and mill, they did not look alike. So you could do different things for the customer. Like the entry level car looks totally different than the GT did. Whereas we couldn't do that the first 4 years. It's unfortunate we didn't get that. I think that was a real slip to not continue the drill and mill, because you could have 2 different cars, 3 different cars, 4 different cars, just change the skins, but have the same chassis with options of wheels and tires and engines and interiors. You could create different cars, different looks, different opportunities, different pricing. And we missed it. Unfortunately.
Okay. All right, but no, because I've seen at various shows, people have put a form of a the Fiero logo on the hood and everything.
Right.
I always wondered it.
That's right. They have the winged horse,
Mm-hmm.
deal, and that was influenced kind of like Ferrari-ish. They have the horse, and we figured we're good too, but our horse is going to fly. And that's the difference. Actually, John Albert designed that.
Yes, he did.
Yep. It was great. By the way, we only were allowed 4 colors. Think of that. You can only have 4. So there was a limit of what we could do manufacturing wise, but that was going to change.
I know, was it going back to what I was asking earlier about accounting and that kind of stuff? Why was there a limit of only 4 in the scheme of things? That seems rather, a short list compared to what else was being made at the time.
You're absolutely right. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. The plant wanted to pick the colors, and we got into a little battle on that. No disrespect to people on choices of colors, but we have experts at design staff that have color palettes, what would appeal to people. And so we finally got the decision that no, we're not going to do that. We're going to take the advice of design staff. So it was kind of funny, but we only had 4 colors. Good question. Good question.
So if I wanted to order like a blue Fiero with a green interior, that probably wouldn't have flown.
No, because we didn't do a green interior.
Okay, thank you.
Just for you, we would probably.
Spinning off his question,
Yeah.
how much influence did design staff have on color options?
All the way.
100%.
100%, yes. Because we have the professionals. They have a whole color studio that, goes out and researches color popularity, car size, car type, personalities, and recommend picking the colors. And it was tough with 4. As you can see, we had red and white and
Black.
We had to get black, and I don't remember that. Then we did the yellow. For
Gold
me,
was in there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Were there certain colors that you just absolutely knew you were going to stay away from?
No, because we didn't get a chance to do any. But I would have wanted to have blue and silver and different ones at the same time. I think 6 color palette would have been a better choice. But at that time, we couldn't get it. You remember, my opinion, we overbuilt the car right away out of the box. We made too many cars and flooded the market. And so that's why they only allowed certain colors. I think in the beginning, they might not even have offered 4, and I don't remember.
Just red and white.
Just red and
For
white.
initial
So there
production.
you go. That's all they could do because of the demand. And so.
Yeah, back in '84, I remember '85. You couldn't swing a dead cat without hitting a red or a white Fiero somewhere driving around.
You got it. Well, sorry about that cat.
All right.
So
Thank you.
I would like to just spotlight a special guest really quick. Lou Wassel worked in Pontiac marketing and product planning during the Fiero's entire life cycle, and he's with us this morning. And he said that he can shed a little bit more light on this topic. So I'm going to invite Lou to unmute himself and join us on screen, or if he's able to just show his video. There we go, Lou.
The name Lou Wassel.
Yes.
He's coming up here.
Hi, John. Your marketing maven is here.
Yes.
How are you?
Fine. How are you doing?
Oh, great. So far, you're batting 1,000. You've answered every one of those marketing and product planning questions, but I thought I'd help you out
When
if
you
I could.
add 1,000, that means you get more money.
Well, I don't know. Tell me. Certainly, you go to the Hall of Fame again.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining in with us, Lou. Do you have anything to add to our conversation?
Well, like I said, he pretty much answered most of them. Going back to the question about the Fiero formula, that was again created to do a step up between the Sport Coupe and the GT at the time. There was really a huge price gap, and we needed to fill it in there for somebody who wanted a little bit more pizzazz than what they could get on a Sport Coupe with the same kind of performance. What we were really after in those days, and we fought quite hard for it, is an engine even beyond the 2.8 V6. In fact, early on in the program, as you probably read in the Fiero history, there was a very compact little 2.9 turbo that was running around with well over 200 horsepower. And John and I actually drove it out at the Milford Proving Ground, or actually we were out at the Desert Proving Ground in Arizona.
Right. That's
And
it.
that would have made the whole difference in that whole program if they'd have been able to bring that out.
And we had the pleasure of meeting the gentleman who developed that engine. So,
Yeah.
which will be in a future episode.
Right. Good.
Well, thank you very much, Lou. We appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Yes. Nice to see you.
All right. Well, that kind of actually, that Turbo 2.9, that really kind of goes into the next question, although that is, of course, more power plant than design. But Anthony Maganoli, you are up. You have a question that both you and Peter Zurich posed. So if you'd like to join us on screen, we'd love to have you pose your question.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Hi, John. Thanks for talking with us today.
Good morning.
My question was, what is one, maybe most, the biggest design feature that you wanted to get into the Fiero that didn't make it through for whatever other reasons? And then the second part of that is, what feature did you get into the car that you really had to fight for that you're most proud of?
Well, the snorkel air intake off the roof was one I wanted to get in, and they did do it on the pace cars at Indy, which was wonderful. And I can tell you, because that reminded me of having something significant like the Trans Am with Shaker Hood, and that would give Pontiac that look. And we actually had it modeled and sculpted, and we had working ones done. And I remember driving one on 12 Mile coming down, and also on Woodward to go back to work. And similar reaction to the bird on the hood by young people, like, where'd you get that? Where's mine? And we fought hard to get that, and we were not allowed to. And I think that was a mistake to me, because that gave us a unique feeling.
What was the counter argument? Was it a cost thing or visibility?
Well, this gets touchy. It was said they didn't know how to separate the water because it would scoop water off the top. But I believe, having some engineering background, I could have figured that out personally. But maybe it was a pain for them to do it. I don't know at this time. But all I know, it was shut down. But they did put them on the pace cars. It looked great. They put lights in them for safety. I said, wow, we won a home run here. But we didn't get it in production.
Gotcha. And what was your favorite that you had to fight for and did get in?
Nothing. They liked everything. Well, except the wheels, the high-tech wheels. I'll tell you a little story on that one. We had this wheel, the high-tech wheel, that's asymmetrical, and it was new for Pontiac. We decided we ought to showcase that on a Fiero. So we had a meeting with my executive, and he came down and he said, that's an unusual wheel, John. What do you call it? I said, it's kind of high-tech, it's modern, it's youthful. Oh, I got it. So then later in the afternoon, we had a top executive come in to look at the Fiero. We had a lot of visits, by the way. A lot of people would come down and say, what's going on? What's going on? Let's see it. So we walked around to the side of the car where the windows were. The car was Dynoc red. It was beautiful. The studio was clean. Everything was perfect. High-tech wheels were on it. So this gentleman looked at the car, and then he had a kind of a scowl. And he looked at Irv Bicky and he said, what are those wheels? And Irv said, you don't know what those are? No, those are high tech, youthful. Oh, okay, I got it. And I kid you not, it's true story, every word. And that's kind of how we had to work. So we could have lost it, but we didn't. We got it. So that was a fight to get the wheels. The wheels were special.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Anthony. And next up, we have a question that was posed by one of our registrants this morning, and that was Jeff Went. And Jeff, you wanted to ask about the generational impact of what would have been the second generation Fiero. But I also see, Jeff, that you posed another question in the chat box as I was bringing this up. So if you want to ask both of your questions, I'm going to go ahead and bring you to the screen now. Jeff has no ability. He has no microphone. So the first question that Jeff has posed in the chat box is, as an owner of a Fiero with custom engineered suicide doors, were these ever considered? He had a conversation with Holke at the 30th where he mentioned it, but legal said no due to multiple possible liability issues. So John, any insight on that?
No, I was not a part of that.
Right, Jeff's yellow stinger really is
part
a
of the
sight to
early
behold.
concept. It must have been,
Yeah.
before you got the songs.
Well, I know that there was I don't know about suicide doors, but there was thinking of taking the forward mounting doors that you've seen on like Lamborghini and different exotic cars. There was thoughts of that. I didn't know about a suicide door.
That's
Right.
the time I heard about the Lamborghini style doors.
Yeah.
All right, well, Jeff's other question, and I think we have another John that can speak on this as well, but you can certainly share a little bit, is how much did the 1990 second generation Fiero design affect the design of the fourth generation Firebirds and Camaros?
Well, I've heard this comparison made. To be very honest, we never looked at that in the studio as being a concern or really something that we wanted. And I know people have made that suggestion, but we were designing cars that were in a family of Pontiacs, sporty cars. And that's where that design came from. But there was no intent to have one emulate the other one. We wanted to keep them very separate, to be honest.
Interesting. Okay. We also had another question come up from Eric Schneck about if the Fiero were a car that were designed today. Eric, I don't know if you have the ability to unmute and share that question, but we certainly invite you to do so.
If we were to have Fiero today,
Yes. Eric, are you able to pose that question directly?
Good morning. Hopefully I'm off mute. Yeah,
We got
So-
you, Eric.
thank you. With all of technology's designs and everything, if you were to build the Fiero today, what would you change? What would you incorporate? What would you do, if anything, differently?
I'm probably selfish in this answer, but the car that we had designed to come out was very fresh. Still would have been fresh today. The lines and the forms and the executions were not complicated. You see a lot of these cars got goofy lines and stuff and bulges all over them. I think cleanliness and beauty and good balance and proportion is a better answer. So the car that we did that didn't make it, I don't think there's any apologies. You could have that today. It's fresh because there aren't any that look like that.
That was a great question, Eric.
Yes, thank you. We have a
All
big
right.
model if anybody wants to see them.
Yeah, John has brought some of his studio photographs of the proposed 90.
This, yeah. This is the 3/4 front view on the patio. This was the last version before it was released for production, which they built 2 mules off of it. And picture of the rear. And then my favorite, because now you're going to see two different cars. This is the entry level. Backwards. There. There's two cars that look totally different on a drill and mill process.
Two different product offerings on the same platform.
Right. Yep.
Perfect.
It's pretty
All right.
awesome. All right. So Jason Jacoby has a question. So Jason, if you'd like to come on camera, you're more than welcome to.
Hey, good morning, John.
Good
I want to go backwards a little bit on the topic of those high-tech wheels there, which I consider classic. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes,
Absolutely.
It's such a classic design. They were used for at least another decade, probably more. I'm curious. I have two questions. One is, now I'll start with the first one. Who gets the credit for designing those, John? John, is that you?
Well, there's certain things that give credit, and that was my design. And also, we used those on the Firebird, only we blew them up bigger. And
Right.
we put them concave and convex on the Firebirds. They're beautiful wheels, and they're unique, and they belong to Pontiac. And nobody ever copied them. But I'll tell you one thing that's interesting. Today, because back then nobody seemed to be experimenting with wheels. And that was a place we could go to make our cars unique. The thing that I see today, I'm starting to see a lot of unique wheels being done, even on trucks, that are kind of fun because it's a place where you can experiment. You know, you don't have to change a sheet metal. A wheel is one place to give a lot of personality to a vehicle.
Yeah, and those machine face with the painted inserts was just so good, so attractive, and especially in the time.
Thank you.
So congratulations to you for coming up with that, because Pontiac, I think, used those into the 2000s maybe, or
I don't remember because I was not working anymore for General Motors in the 2000s.
So the second part of my question was,
Sure.
a lot of people aren't aware of this, and this happens a lot when people get on eBay or we're at Craigslist and they find, I found a set of these high-tech wheels. They're in great shape and for my Fiero, and they put them on and something don't look right. So my question is, why did only the Fieros and get like the wider lip or the around that rim? Like the Grand Ams and the Sunbirds had more of like a flat face to them. So I'm curious if that was a styling choice by the team to give the Fiero a unique wheel, or is that engineering?
That was because of the offsets on the wheels, the hub to the face of the wheel. And when we got bigger wheels that had a little more girth to the outside, we could get the rim. And you bring up a very good point. I was doing some research that wasn't on Fiero, it was on something else out in California. Might have been a Fiero, sorry. And these kids that would come with their youthful cars, and they would be interviewed, and they kept talking about their rims. So the marketing people at Pontiac, when it was quiet, they said, "Hey, Schinella, what's this rim stuff?" So I took them outside to look at their cars, and they had these rims offset, nice and bright. And we wanted to have rims where we could do it. So some of the wheels we were able to do it, to have it. I like that offset rim because it looks deep, it looks more performance, and we were able to do that. Couldn't do that on all the wheels, but some of them we did. You'll see the Snowflake, the bigger ones, got rims on it.
Yeah, a great example is this car has 16-inch.
Yep.
You were
Right.
proposing for the next body style.
Yep.
And it definitely enhances the exterior.
And some people see that, and especially young people who like sportiness, the rim means sports to them versus a flat wheel.
That was
Yeah,
a great.
I was always kind of surprised that Pontiac went to the extra effort to make two different versions of that 14-inch rim. One only for the Fiero, and then the other one was used in most of the other cars. So that's interesting.
Right.
All right, very good.
Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you, Jason. And then Ken has another great question for us. So Ken, if you would like to come back on screen, you certainly may.
Hey guys, my question was, in the design process, just how long did it take for both of those, the first and second generation cars to come through your studio, like start to end? Did you have them in there for a year, 6 months, 2 years? And after they were released, particularly the first generation car, did you have some back and forth with manufacturing to massage the design to make it something more productionizable?
We were talking about the new vehicle that we did, the second generation, just the first generation.
Well, both of them, as far as time through the studio. Obviously, the second one didn't make it to production, but just curious, that just from somebody who's not in the business, how long a car takes to go through your studio, and then after you've released it, is there still some back and forth, some changes that have to be made to make it be able to be built?
Usually, we work real close with the engineers and their expertise. And when we were doing the Fiero, the first Fiero, we actually cut the door cuts in and hood cuts, which we never used to do. We just put black tape on the car. I wanted to see what the car looked like with the grooves, because back in the day we used to have large cut lines and big gaps, and GM got itself together, Ford and Chrysler, they started to close those gaps up. Like Europeans were building very close tolerances, and we finally got there. And I wanted to see what our car would look like, because when you put a cut on a curved surface, obviously that curved surface is going to be higher than the lower surface. So you have to make that adjustment in the plane of the where the cut and the fender comes together, like to a hood. And in fact, Verbicki came in and he said, "Gee, that's kind of neat. What are you doing, John?" I said, "Well, I'm going to cut those cuts in. I want to see what it really looks like." He said, "That's a good idea." So we did that. Usually a car would be in the studio for a year and or so. I don't remember, because we would do 3 or 4 cars at a time, sequential for different years. So we just didn't do one car. So we were busy, and I don't remember technically, but we also, once the clay was done, engineering would take that and they would build a wood model at a job shop, the final buy off on everything, where they could make these adjustments and improve the sections or improve the clearances. So the clay was the first step, and a wood model would be done, and then we're off and running into the steel or plastics parts, whatever.
Well, if you want to elaborate on the dates, we have April 24th, 1980 as the official date that you were handed the Fiero project. And we had production cars by July 16th, 1983. So you had about 2.5 years that you developed the exterior.
Boy, I don't remember that. 2.5. Well, maybe that's because I didn't have it that long. Right. But when it's turned over to engineering, and then they made the part wood model, and then manufacturing had to make the parts. Probably that makes sense. So, but we've never been working on a car for over a year and then fire me.
Okay, so that was the root of his question, is how much time? So no more than a year, would be normal for your exterior design.
Was that pretty standard for all of your cars in general, or was the Fiero more compact? Or
well, there's one we had a hard time selling, and that was the Bonneville. When we brought the Bonneville back, and we wanted to do the performance, but I tried to sell it and we couldn't sell it, and that sat around, and we sold the idea and they built the car. But if it's done fresh for production and there's no hiccups, that's about right.
Did you kind of keep an eye on what was going on in the advanced studio, so you had an idea of what was coming once it made it to your studio?
Not really. We didn't have time, and it's kind of interesting. Advanced studios were kind of secret. They do stuff, they get a chance to explore more. Whereas when we do stuff, we can be advanced, but we got to put it in production. So there's a big difference. And I usually, if a theme came up, and it could, it would change and get modified because of engineering and fabrication. And or maybe somebody changed their mind that the design isn't quite appropriate. But they could explore things that we could not. We explored them in sketches, but they could explore them in 3-dimensional scale models, etc.
Okay.
And it's good to have that process.
Yeah. All right. Thank
Also,
you.
Great explanation as to the different tiers that an automobile goes through to make it to production on.
Right. But in the one that never made it, that was done entirely in our studio from scratch to release.
Oh, so that one never, the second generation never came from Advance?
No, came from us.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay. I got to ask one last question. You weren't responsible for the Aztec, were you?
Yes.
Little
Yep. The SUV.
I know. Scott, that's a whole nother issue. I don't think we want to discuss that here.
We're not going down the rabbit hole.
I was in charge of marketing design staff for that car, and it was tough. But in the end, it turned out to be a great car because it served the needs of the people of being more of a beach kind of vehicle and camping and stuff. It just, the exterior was not to my liking at all.
Okay.
What it did was good.
All right. I had to ask. Sorry. I didn't mean to.
I know you. You're fired.
All right, Anthony, Maganoli, you had two questions. One about the 88 rims and tires, and the other about some unique design challenges. So, Anthony, you are up on that.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, sorry if my video is messed up here, but the question was, my 88 GT and maybe others have wider rear tires, but the same aspect ratio front and rear, making the rear tires taller than the front. Was this a design directive, or was this an engineering or vehicle dynamics directive that dictated that?
This is
rather than having them.
No, that would be 88 Fiero.
Did we do bigger wheels today?
Well, 88 Fiero, they revised the suspension.
Oh, that's right, too. Yeah.
So they had the trailing arms.
Yes.
Right. And eliminated the bump steer issue.
Yeah.
So they, in order to change the scrub rating ratio on the front, they widened the front suspension and offsetted the wheels to a more negative dish. So the front wheels on an 88 Fiero do not have the look.
To be honest, I don't remember that happening, and it's quite good that happening. But when we did the second generation, we wanted bigger tires in the rear because of mid-engine, and they said you wouldn't need it, and I said I think you're going to need it, and I'm not being negative. So they did a test with what they were doing for the second generation. They came back in the studio one day and they said, "You're right, John. We're going to have bigger wheels and tires in the back."
Yeah, I get the wider rear tires.
Yeah.
It was the fact that the aspect ratio was not changed so that the rear tire became taller than the front overall. Right. And yeah, that was my question. But I think that was typical of maybe some of the European sports cars of the 80s.
Yes.
So I'm going to jog John's memory a little bit. We had this discussion in the studio one time when we were doing some tire kicking. And John, I think you wanted the 55 aspect ratio in those days. The problem was nobody in the world, I think, except Pirelli made those things. And we scoured sourcing everywhere to find 55 aspect ratios. The tires were 205 in the front, 215 in the rear. And John wanted the 55 aspect ratio rather than the 60s. Just couldn't find those anywhere.
That was exactly what I was looking for. So it was a supplier constraint.
Yeah, no, he made an impassioned speech about those things, and I can remember saying, "We can't find those anywhere." Pirelli, and that's it.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you ask for more than you can get, but it wasn't the wrong direction. That's all.
It was absolutely the right direction.
Thank you.
Well, for what it's worth, I've updated my car with 17s, but I kept the same aspect ratios front and rear, so my rears are just slightly taller than the fronts, just as the original.
Good job.
So my second question was, what were some of your team's unique design challenges in terms of working with a plastic body? Any compromises that you had to make, or unique challenges in working with plastic?
I found none. It was all workable. I didn't find any challenges that you couldn't do this or that, because actually with the molded plastic components, you can get more done and better than with sheet metal sometimes. So we're pretty happy with it.
Okay. How about like edges and creases? Could you get as sharp as you wanted to on all those?
Yes, if you wanted creases, we weren't into big creases on our cars, but yeah, you could mold just about anything you wanted and get the effect. We were very happy with the process and the material.
Cool. Okay. Thanks. Thanks again.
All right. Along those lines, I know John Bakey has a question about Enduraflex, so I'm going to bring him on for that question since it is along these lines.
Hey, John, this has just been a fabulous interview. I'm so appreciative to be able to be a part of this. What a treasure you are to the Fiero community. My question, Enduraflex, is two-part. Number one, was that technology that GM had developed and it was basically on the shelf waiting for a good platform to use it, and along comes the P car? And number two, after the demise of the Fiero, why did we not see the Enduraflex technology that used on other GM models?
I don't know, but thank you for the compliments. But you have a team. I have a team of people that are very creative. It's not all one person. And I just did a couple of interviews for some Australians, and I drive that point home. No one man can make it do everything. You have to have a lot of people. Yes, I have a patent for a wheel and I have a patent for a front end or whatever. But it's a whole team that works together, just like a football team. If they're synchro, they go to the Super Bowl. And if you do a good car, it'll be a winner. And it's the team that creates it. But thank you for the compliments. I appreciate that.
All right, Brian Deroff has a question about taillights. And so, Brian, I'm going to have you come on for that question.
Yep. Hi, guys. I'm not going to go on video. So, Johnny, and thanks again for this. I'm probably a little bit partial, but I got to tell you, I think the rear end of the Fastback GTs is probably the sexiest rear end I've ever seen on a car. Notwithstanding the P2, we'll let the P2 side since it was a concept vehicle. But who came up with the concept for the light up Pontiac and the taillights, and where did that concept come from?
Could have been me. I just wanted it to light up. I thought it was important to have the lights, like the name. We're proud of our name. Why not have it lit up? I don't remember if it was any one person, just maybe working with lights. Thank you.
Cool thing to do.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Indeed.
You know what's interesting? You talk about the taillights, and taillights were always important to Pontiac and headlights. And we actually would have meetings at Pontiac or the proving grounds with our cars to see that the lights were significant and had their own brand look. And Bill Davis, a good friend of mine that worked on several projects, if we had had the LED stuff back then, what we could have done to make more unique taillights.
Definitely.
Wow.
Well, thank you, John. I still think you nailed it with the Fastback GTs.
thank
That's something that from a half mile away, I know it's a Fiero at night.
Thank you.
And Jason, I see you had a kind of a follow-up question on that.
Yeah, and I too just have to congratulate you all around again, not just for the wheels, but the design of the car. You can't see the chats probably, but a few of us have been chatting, and that the profile, it's been burned in my brain since I was a child in the 80s. It's just the obviously we're Fiero people, but it's the most beautiful car I've ever seen, and I've been driving them for 30 years. But no, my question was just speaking of those light up Pontiac. I don't think it was ever applied to any other Pontiac model, even the Firebirds, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just interested how it's really cool it got on the Fiero, like a lot of things, like the special wheels as well. But was there ever a thought to do that to other Pontiacs, or is it only a Fiero unique thing?
He's asking about the light up Pontiac and the taillights, why it was not used on other models.
think we were trying to get that done on the Firebird, but the Firebird, we couldn't put it in the middle because I think that was the gas cap.
Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't get it there.
Oh,
But I also want to say one thing about the Fiero, and you brought up about the excitement. I liked the interior. The interior of the Fiero was exciting. I mean, it was mechanical, it was fun, it was comfortable, and there was a lot of room in there. I love the gauges. Having driven those cars in Pontiac when they were prototypes, I was impressed with the interior design at that time in history. And the speakers in the headrest, that's a big thing today they talk about. We had them a long time ago.
yeah, 40 years ago. Yeah, I tell a lot of friends that.
Well, I'm gonna go ahead, Jason, if there's more to your question.
Well, you know what? I was going to ask this one next, but you just did a good segue there, John. So obviously you had involvement in the interior. Another question I've always wondered is I'm a fan of the 84. That was my first car I had as a teenager. I've had multiple Fieros for 30 years and I'm back to an 84 again. I'm back home. One of the things I love about my 84 is the interior. I love the striped seats. I love the headrest speakers. I love the notchback styling on the outside, the bumper pads, everything. My question is, why did the striped seats go away after 84? Because Pontiac obviously thought they were cool because they brought them back for the prototype.
Yeah.
So was it a supplier thing or was there some other reason
Don't know.
that they went away?
I don't know. And actually, the fellow chief designer of the interior, as I was the exterior, was Bill Scott. He did a super job.
Absolutely.
Good designer, good manager, good team. I think he was working with John Albert at the time, and they did a good job.
People to this day get in Fieros, like someone said earlier, and go, wow, there's a lot of room in here. And
Yes.
it's a modern feeling environment.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's got a lot of room versus the new Corvette. You get in it, it's claustrophobic. They got that thing coming down the middle. It's hard to sit in it. For me, that is. You want space in a car. You don't want to feel like you're in a cocoon.
And you
Thank you.
guys nailed it again. Thank you.
So speaking of interior, and I'm not sure if he has, he does have full video capabilities because I see him on the screen. John Shetler is with us this morning, and he was the group chief designer of GM Advanced Interiors, who did some of the early work on the early 80s prototypes and Fiero interior. So John, I don't know if you wanted to say hello this morning. We can bring you on screen.
I remember John Shetler.
And I remember John Schinella.
Right. Well, John, you were responsible for the interior in the Firebirds that was so significant with the Stuart Warner gauges, steering wheel. You guys were great.
That was the 68.
Yeah, I know.
Well, what happened, just to fill you in a little bit on the interior, when I became group chief designer of the advanced interior, at that time, we were doing the 82 Camaro Advance and the 82 Firebird Advance. And Hawkey came down with a drawing and laid it out on the engineering table in Ron Hill's studio, showing all the components he was going to use. And at the same time, what was going on at GM Design was we couldn't get our shops enough help in the advanced interior. So we started working with Foam Core, and we had a team, as John was talking. It's all about the team. And we put together a cross-functional team, and George Anderson is part of this conversation today. He was part of it. We had Marv Fisher, I believe. We had a group that were good at making. Corin Hansen could make a full car out of foam core. So when we couldn't get the help in the shops, because of the priority was always advanced was last, interiors were the bottom, but the top was, of course, the production. But the Bicky was in charge, and when he wanted a show out on the patio with Ron Hill's advanced Fiero, Irv was expecting a full interior. So we had no choice but to make it out of foam core because we couldn't get the help from the shops. And so we did the full interior. Well, it caused about 1,000 grievances that I was responsible for. So he ended up, Byron Warner came down right after Halkey brought his drawing down and said, John, we need to build this buck up at Pontiac Engineering because we can't get it done fast enough. And Bob Stemple wants to be able to sell the interior and the spaciousness, which was brought up before, at the same time that Ron had the exterior. And so we sent the team and they built the buck, which was really the forerunner of Bucks of the Future programs. And so it was brought down, finished. It was all done in foam core, no modeling. I think there's a photograph in one of the books where it shows the seats, but it also was a full foam core interior covered with vinyl and so forth. And Bob Stemple walked in just before the meeting with the board to get the program approved in April of '80 and said, thank God we have this. And he could sit in it. And he was a big guy. I think,
Yes.
what was he, John, 6'4"?
Yeah, he was a big guy. Yeah.
Yeah. And he said, boy, I can really feel comfortable in this. And one of the reasons what we went to the pod idea was it going laterally thinking to the aircraft industry. We wanted to have the gauges right in front of the driver and the hand controls, but we wanted to push the front as far as the MVSS rules would allow us, because at that time we weren't using airbags or SIR systems. So that's how the interior package got put together. And then in April, as John alluded to, it went up to
Bill Scott.
Pontiac had just taken over, I think, Pontiac Interior. And I think Kim Gregg was his assistant at that time. I'm not sure, but as John said, it went upstairs. But anyway, that's the story of how it got started. And up to that point in interiors, they didn't have a lot of advanced interior studios in GM design. They had the interiors when they would start out on a program were basically advanced done by the production studios. But in this case, from '82 on, we did the Fiero, the Camaro, the Firebird. Glenn Wintersheet, who was an exterior designer and who came down and worked on the interior. He did the advanced Firebird version of the 82 Firebird that eventually went up to Bill Scott and went up to John's studio. So that's kind of the story of how we worked, the process. It was really, as John mentioned, a lot of experimentation, but the UAW skilled trades really drove us to a new process. And we couldn't do it in clay fast enough or get the help from the wood shop, the metal shop, the lines of demarcation to get the job done. So it was very creative. The team, like Corn Hansen, George Anderson, and we had another guy who had worked on the L1011 Lockheed overhead compartments. So he did a lot of the foam core work. And we did it all up at Pontiac. And I think Dan Nelson was involved in that but everything was done at Pontiac under the supervision of Byron Warner. And Halkey, of course, ran the program. But Byron, I think at that time was at least assistant chief engineer.
Right.
And he followed the program.
Yep.
So I hope that enlightens you. And I might mention why John had problems with the color, because my assignment later on in around 92 was to come into the GM design color room and take that over. And one of the reasons he only could get 3 colors or 4 colors was that's all the paint lines that were in the plant to produce the Fiero. And when we used to have a lot of colors, there were a lot of paint lines available, but to cut costs, they reduced the amount of paint lines that were allowed for certain models. And the Fiero, I think it only had 4, right, John?
Yeah, right.
And that's why he only had a choice of red, yellow, white, and I think black. I thought there was a blue, but I may be wrong.
There was a blue metallic.
Yeah. And that was it.
John, that's great. Thank you for your input. That's important. And that whole process, I wasn't aware of that being up there. But, you know, Byron Warner, I love that guy. He's terrific. He's still around. And he was very creative. He loved design staff. And actually, the relationship with Pontiac and design staff was probably one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I came in as chief designer in July of 68 in Pontiac Interior, because John DeLorean wanted a young guy. And I came over from Chevrolet. And at that time, Byron Warner was the head of all the electrical systems at Pontiac. And so one of the things I learned from Schinella, being his gopher, and when I was in Chevrolet 2 Interior, was the most important gauge in the car was the oil pressure gauge. And up to that point in the instrument panels, and especially in the Firebird at that time, the 70.5, they wanted a clock in the middle between the tach and the speedometer. And we had a very creative studio engineer and said, we can't have the tach on the hood. They wanted to have the tach inside the vehicle. So he came up and said, why don't we put a clock inside the tach? So in the 90 or the 80, 70.5 Firebird, Byron Warner was able to make that happen and put the oil pressure gauge in the middle and have the clock tach.
Wow.
That was Byron.
Yeah.
That was the Pontiac, alluding to what John is talking about, is the Pontiac team at that time. When I came over from Chevrolet, it was Halke was part of the team, Byron Warner, Bill Collins was assistant chief engineer. It was a very DeLorean demanded a team like that, and he was so much a charismatic leader that he could get everybody believing that nothing was impossible.
Right.
And, he came down and looked at the steering wheel at Bob Loix had created, and we had our trim shop do the rim and sew it up. And anyway, at that point, the DeLorean comes down and he looks at this, and he always called me Johnny. He never called me John. He said, Johnny, that is a hell of a steering wheel. And I said, well, John, it's a great steering wheel, but Inland Fisher Guide doesn't have the equipment, the tools to build it. He says, well, we'll get somebody else to do it. At that time, GM was so vertically integrated that they did everything in-house. Inland Fisher Guide, except for Pontiac. Pontiac, because of DeLorean, and before him, Pete Estes, were able to get, in fact, the instrument panels were done by a firm in Massachusetts. They had the first real soft sculptured instrument panel. And so he goes to Scheller Globe and says, makes a contract, and then they had a group vice president, Roger Keyes. He looked like Darth Vader on a day off. So he comes into the studio, and John DeLorean was about 6'4", and so was Keyes, and they went nose to nose, and Kai says, "We're not going to allow you to do it." He says, "Yes, you will. We're going to do it." And that's it, Roger. And so Keyes walked out, DeLorean got his way, and that's how the wheel eventually came into the 70.5 Firebird.
Bunky Knudsen was also great for Pontiac.
Yeah, and Bunky Knudsen, he started he brought in DeLorean, he brought in Pete Estes as chief engineer.
Yep.
And Pete Estes, up to that time, I believe, was either at Oldsmobile or working with Charles Kettering. So he was very dynamic.
Yep.
So anyway, that's a lot of story about the Pontiac team.
Good job, John. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John. And Jeff Jones has been posing a question to us about the very famous headlights that our little cars have. And so I'm going to bring him onto the screen now.
Yeah, John. First, thanks very much for doing this. Appreciate your time. And thank goodness the Fiero came out in the days when pop-up headlights were allowed. But I guess my question is, was there ever any designs that didn't include pop-up headlights, or did you ever get any pushback on pop-up headlights, either for the original or for the 90?
We always have trouble with that because it seems to be an alignment process to get the continuity. And we had it on the Firebird, we've had it on the Fiero. But if we had the technology that we have today, we wouldn't need pop-ups. Because now the Firebird, which has the flip-up lights, they have headlights now that fit in that slot that pass inspection. And we could have done that on the Fiero. So technology today, from lights, like I talked about before, it's amazing. You can do anything with it. If you see dumb-looking taillights or headlights, whatever, forget it. They can do anything they want to do, verticals or horizontals or diagonals. Any pattern they can make them light up and be pass. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking.
Thank you, Jeff.
All right, John. I actually have a question for you. We've talked about the various different color that were available for the Fiero. Of course, we had the red and the white, and then they introduced the black and the silver, and eventually came the gold and the metallic blue and the yellow, and also the medium red metallic. What was your personal favorite color on a Fiero, and what body style was your favorite?
Well, I'd have to say the yellow, because that was the color that I was pushing, because I thought we needed something like that. And you can change colors. I didn't realize, and John Shetler talked about it, they only had 4 peat lights, and it just shows you that was a cost thing that didn't allow flexibility. And I think we needed at least a couple more colors in the deal. I like all the colors. They seem to make the car, it fits the car's personality. Silver was also another one that I was a favorite, because silver shows the forms and the different lighting. I always like the metallic colors because they do more form shapes. They produce the car, you can see the shapes better in the metallics. But they all look fine to me.
And so Lou says behind the scenes, they called it Schinella yellow.
That's right.
So
it was not easy getting that color. I thought it'd be easy peasy, but it wasn't. We sold a few. It looked good.
Yeah, 241 GTs to be exact. Is like the one you've got behind you. So
It turns out that the yellow was one of the most rare colors produced.
Oh, good. Yay for us, the team.
So touching on that 4-color paint line,
Yeah.
What happened was they would cancel the color to produce like the yellow or
Right.
the blue metallic.
Yeah.
and wouldn't offer the other color. And in some instances, the former color didn't come back at all. Yeah. So it was just plain out canceled, which causes a rarity thing with the collectability of the cars today.
All right, Ken has another question for us about some of the changes that were happening internally in General Motors and the impact on your project.
There. Yeah, my question, John, if I remember right, you were at GM starting all the way back at kind of towards the end of the DeLorean era, and were there definitely through the Roger Smith era. I was just curious on the design side, how much of all that corporate cost cutting and consolidation affected what you were doing down in the design area, or maybe it didn't at all.
Well, you know, I came into GM in 1961. I didn't even have a job offer. It was an opportunity. They hired, I think there was George Gallion, there was Lenny Casillo, there was another fellow, didn't make it. They wanted some people that thought outside the box. And when I got there, I worked with a lot of people that thought outside the box, including Bill Mitchell, Chuck Jordan, Dave Holes, and the people were great. There was nobody pushing you into a corner. You have to do it this way or that way. If there was any push, it was being more expressive. And brand character was a big thing back then. And if you look at cars back then, that's why they're so popular today. They all look different. I mean, an Oldsmobile didn't look like a Pontiac or vice versa. And that was the design influence coming from up above. And most of it from Bill Mitchell. I think Bill Mitchell drove that home really hard. And working in that environment, I didn't see a lot of that. I didn't see a lot of cost cutting. The only cost cutting I saw was when I got to Pontiac, there was a fellow that came down in a black suit. He had a black book with numbers in it. And they would look at a molding or a badge or something like that. I didn't see us being held back much at all in Pontiac. I didn't see it in Chevy. I worked on the first Camaro, worked on the 65 Cadillac. It was like, go, 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 and make it better than anybody else. And that was the excitement. In fact, management from General Motors would come down when we were doing the 65 Cadillac. They would go to Chevrolet. They would go to Cadillac, because those were the bookends of General Motors at that time. And then they'd go look at the other divisions. So we had corporate visions looking, and I didn't see anything happening that was astonishing and cutting this. You can't do that. And but I think that crept in the later years, more of that. Like, for instance, having a body and then putting all the cladding on to make the difference in the models. Like from Pontiac to Buick to Chevrolet, I think we used too much of that cladding to disguise the cars to be different. But that's when I saw that happening. Same body, same money, with the cladding on, get differentiated. But I think we had a lot of freedom.
Thank you.
And appreciative that we had the freedom to create great cars.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Rob Bartlett, you had a question for us also about the Fiero color palette. So if you'd like to join us on screen or just through audio, we'd love to hear from you. Oh, Rob says he does not have any audio, but wanted to know if you had any insight on paint colors that didn't make the cut. Were there any that were proposed, but that ultimately did not make the cut?
We didn't have one on the Fiero, but we had one on the Firebird, and it was solar gold that went into production. And then they said they couldn't paint it anymore. They changed the color and made it very green, a green gold. So anybody who has that solar gold Trans Am has something very special that did not make it. And that's the only color I've ever seen being pulled that didn't make it.
Interesting. Yeah, I know there are several of us, Rob included, that wish there had been some form of a green Fiero, but alas, that was not to be. All right, Michael Shane Wilcher, you have a question as well. Not sure if you have audio capabilities, but if you do, welcome you to join us on screen.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
We sure can.
You can.
Yes.
All right. My question was, in the 80s, a decade known for its excessive lifestyles, just how much clout in the female category would the head of the Peabody Project have wielded?
So what he's asking is, during your design process, how much emphasis did you have on marketing towards the female market?
Well, I do not remember a lot because what we wanted was an interior that was spacious, comfortable, which I think females want. Also, where they can put their purse or things. And I don't remember any major things that didn't work. Now, probably they could or didn't. I don't know. But I know that we did a space. There was a spacious interior. The look was fun from what we heard. It was exciting. People liked it. I didn't see any negativity coming from that side. I don't know.
All right. And Eric Schneck, you also had some questions, so I'm going to bring you on to pose those as well.
All right, let me jump in again here. So my question was, obviously when the Fiero first came out, it was kind of downplayed by GM brass, but as it got into the public eye, as the press wrote about it with favorable reviews, as it started winning races and things like that, did that have any change with the upper management of Pontiac? Did they look at it differently? Did they want to start embracing the project or throwing money at it or anything? Or was it always just one of those, little nuggets that they just kind of pushed to the side?
I think Pontiac was pretty much heavy duty behind the Fiero, the philosophy of it, especially mid-engine. It was the first mid-engine car made in America by Americans. And I think they were very much behind it. I mean, so much so that's why we had the second generation going. And unfortunately, we lost it because I've heard a lot of reasons. I heard we didn't sell 45,000 that last year, and we only sold 42,000, and the axe came down. And I don't know if that's a true story or not. I've heard that. That's all I heard. I heard a lot of excuses, and it's a shame because they didn't give us a shot. Because the second generation had all the bells and whistles that it needed. But we had to earn it for 4 years. And I thought we earned it, but we didn't get a chance.
I've heard other stories too. Luke could probably talk about it, where the Caravan changed the entire market for vehicles overall and tipped it on its head. So, but I appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
If you don't mind, I do have a question for you.
No,
in the 60s, Mr. DeLorean had always wanted a two-seat Pontiac.
Right.
How much of that philosophy and train of thought transferred over to Fiero?
Well, the car that was done, if you look at the design of it, and this is and I'm partial for both Pontiac and Chevrolet, it looked like it was going to be a Corvette more than the Pontiac.
And you're talking about
the
John's design.
John DeLorean. Yeah. I don't know if he designed it or influenced it.
Right.
I don't know. I think they did it in design staff quietly, but to me, that car looked too much like a Corvette, because what we have done is the Mako Shark 1 and 2 we did, and those were the themes for the 68 Corvette. And I'm not seeing any of that in my time there, because I came in at 61, worked on the Cadillacs. Then I was doing the Mule for the Chaparral race car that was a mid-engine Corvette program. Then I worked on Chevrolet, the Chevy 2 studio. We opened that up, and it was Hank Hagen was my boss. He made me an assistant. Thank you, Hank. And we were doing sports cars, sporty things. And that's where I saw DeLorean, and I saw Bucky Knudsen and stuff. And being a young guy, it was very refreshing and very exciting time. And I didn't see any of that till I came back from Australia. And I know that time Pontiac wanted that car, but the corporation said, no, that's too competitive, too similar to a Corvette. We only need one. But what they did is they gave Pontiac, the Chevrolet Camaro parts, the cockpit, the doors, I think maybe the hood or the quarters, and they had their own front end, and they did a beautiful car. In fact, to be really honest, I'm in Australia, and I see Jerry Titus racing these Trans Ams, and I said, I want that for my company car. And I thought that Pontiac did an amazing job. I still love the Camaro, but I said we had two very distinctive cars sharing the body, kind of like the Fiero, but with different skins and stuff and getting a different look. So, and I'm glad they got the fiber the way they did. And it became a more useful car for people. It was a 2+2 occupant.
So was there any thoughts in the back of your head that, we're fulfilling John's intentions, not currently with the Fiero?
Oh, yeah, you could say that. Yeah. John DeLorean was the basic man. I'll tell you the funniest thing. We'd have the executive lunch where he'd come with his staff, financial, engineering, marketing. We'd have lunch. When John put his fork down and stood up, everybody else did. Whether you had a spoon in your mouth or whatever, and you're out the door to go look at product. He was a man of speed and decisions. He made some good decisions.
That was a great answer. All right, Jen, we have another question.
Actually, the next question goes to you. It's your turn to be able to ask another question, Fred.
Oh,
you're wrong.
It's me.
It's you. You got to ask so many in July that we wanted to give everyone else a chance, but you do get a new one.
And that was the purpose of our seminar, make sure that everybody that wanted to talk to John had their opportunity. I do have some notes. When you were given the Fiero project, it came up from Advanced Studio with Ron Hill.
Yeah.
Did you have the physical car in your studio to look at to say, okay, what are we going to do with this? Or was it a drawing based?
Yeah, we had to get a buck going, and we had to decide on the proportions. That's when we shortened the nose. We're going to have a little more length in the back. We thought the windshield should have a better angle. And there were a lot of moves to make it more sporty, not so mechanical. And excuse me.
Give him some water. Oh, geez, yeah, thank you.
Excuse me. This is not vodka either.
It could be.
As far as
yeah, as far as we know.
Oh, thank you. We sat down and got the designers together, the sculptors, the engineers, and I said, this is an important project for Pontiac. It's something fun, something we all like. It's sporty, it's mid-engine. And so we set about drawings. We had full-size tape drawings on the boards to do and to get what we wanted to do size-wise as far as shortening the nose and the windshield angle, etc. And then the buck was made and we started to clay it up. It was an exciting program. Like in the book, there's a picture of the designers and sculptors and myself. It was fun. It was like a party. We loved it.
So while you're doing the exterior shaping, the Fiero experienced a lot of wind tunnel testing.
It did.
Was there any point in the design process where they came back and said, hey, John, we really need to change the shape, this angle? Was there much of that?
Not really, because remember, this was supposed to be a economy car, back and forth, maybe a young secretary. It could be male or female.
Sure.
And there was not a lot, I wasn't 100% interested in aerodynamics because we're not going to race it.
Which segues into my next question.
Yeah.
The Indy Pace car. Yeah. Now that car, that body design and shape was subject to wind.
Yes, it was. Yes.
What was your experience with that?
Well, because it has to go a lot faster to
Oh, yeah.
qualify as a pace car. So you have to make a lot of moves. It was great. It was great. It's fun. Great looking car.
And the rear wing was developed for a legitimate downforce
Yes.
purpose.
Yep.
Did you have any influence on the design of that particular
Just
piece?
that everything that happened was fine. Couldn't ask for anything better, to be honest. Yeah.
We still good on the questions, or I keep going?
So Ken asked if John is surprised at the staying power of the Fiero and the following that it enjoys today.
Paraphrase. Okay. What is your thoughts on how the Fiero is still a viable collectible automobile today? What did you think of our Fiero community after experiencing our Fiero 40th?
I think the Fiero has earned a place in history by unanimous acceptance. What's interesting about this to me, and I found this, and I make the comparison to the Firebird things that I go to too, is there's another generation of people up and coming. And I see kids with their parents with these cars, and they love them. And you get families involved in the restoration and to drive them. And some aren't perfect, but some are better than perfect. It's a family thing. And I think this is a car that employs that because of its size, its technology, the forms, the interior. I think it's a car that relates to young people, and they get excited about it. I mean, it's amazing. These kids they're our future, not us.
Right.
They are.
Exactly.
And they like us a lot. I've got a nephew and a niece that love cars. The niece loves gold Firebirds or Fieros, and red or black Trans Ams is the young man. Grandchildren.
All right, and Jason wanted to know if Ken can settle it once and for all. Although John made it sound like he loves all his children, but notchback or fastback?
Oh, I like the fastback, but they're great both because they're both different.
Yeah,
and they appeal to different people. But we wanted the fastback because it just completed the package of being mid-engine.
So it seems like you went to the fastback design pretty quickly.
You think?
After the introduction of the original Fiero.
It was like a flash overnight. But it's interesting that we did it just because three guys talked about it. You know, the chief engineer, myself, and stuff, and all of a sudden we put it together, sculpted, we cast it, we made a car.
So some of the original concept drawings of the proposed Indy pace car incorporate the fastback roofline design. Right. Was there a good strong possibility you're moving towards that direction for the Indy pace car to be a fastback as a limited production or limited?
Yeah, we wanted to go that way, and also we snorkel good, didn't get it.
Only on 3 of them.
I know. But I know some people are making them. Some are different. Right. Little boxy. Yep. They got the idea and they wanted to have that influence.
Yeah, the real Indy pace car scoops are very, very rare.
Yeah.
Very hard to find.
All right, Peter also had a question. This might actually be a question for Lou, but John, we'll see if you have an input to it as well. To your knowledge, has someone in marketing perhaps actually profiled who would have liked notchbacks versus who would have liked fastbacks? Was there a market specific to both of those cars styles?
No. Nobody talked about that.
John's right. We tried to look at it, and there really isn't a difference. Demographically, they're both good-looking cars.
Right.
It's just a personal preference, and GM design nailed them on both ends.
As you mentioned, with the platform, the way it was configured with the mill and drill,
right,
you could design anything you wanted for different market.
Yeah, yeah, we could have done a little wagon or something. We never did, but we could have because it was there.
And naturally, the convertible was always a consideration.
Right. Yeah.
You want to elaborate on the convertibles that were
Just didn't do it. I don't know. We should have. An open air car, I mean, you'd be fine.
And some of the early design concepts had T-tops. Any inclination as to why that did not continue as a theme? I mean, eventually, they offered T-tops.
Yeah. It just takes time.
Time.
We did not want to get into, we did on the Firebird where they were cutting it with a saw, and riveting and mating. We wanted to be in-house, so
Right.
quality, safe. Yeah.
Right. Fred, we've had offers for John to adopt Eric Schneck. I'm sure he'll want to pass on that. We also have some other accolades that we can share. But Fred, do you have any final questions on your list that you'd like to pose?
One thing that is a common theme in the Witzenberg book is you never compromised on having fake designs, fake components. Everything was functional. Was there anything on the Fiero that got changed because?
Well, we had an air intake on the side, and I forget the. It was something that engineering wanted. I don't know if it was us. I don't really remember.
Well, the original design Fiero, when they built it in pilot form in January of '83, the air intake was bolted to the bottom of the frame underneath the driver's seat, and there was no side air intake.
Right.
So your design studio had to improvise in a matter of a few months that side intake.
Yeah.
And there's always been the controversy is why isn't there a matching intake or grill on the passenger side?
Right. That's because they took the air in on that side for the where they needed it.
Mm-hmm.
So you put it where you need it. You don't have to have a fake, but it's okay. You can't, it's interesting. When we did the wheels that were asymmetric, somebody said to me, well, when they're on the other side of the car, they're going to look like they're going in a different direction. I said, well, how are you going to be on both sides of the car at the same time?
And would you actually notice if you did?
That's right. So, and that's true for the scoop. There's one on one side, one on the other. You put them where you need them. Like the hood on the Trans Am was asymmetric for a reason.
So that just completely negated needing a fake scoop on the other side.
Right. We didn't even propose that.
And that also carries into the quarter windows on the original coupe. It was noted in Witzenberg's book that he wanted something that was aesthetically fitting the car, and you had argued on several occasions to make that blend with the body line, just to having fake louvers and ducts.
Right. Sounds like I wanted a lot of things. I was directing, the one thing about the job, and we've talked that, like one guy does it all. You open the door. In fact, Bill Davis said that. And Jim Shook said, Schinella, you always open the door for creativity. You never block. So you let us run because you want to see a lot of ideas. And then with the team, you pick the best that work. That was the fun part of the job.
Very good.
Everybody said, Mitchell designed all the cars and he chucked it. No, I never saw Bill Mitchell draw anything in my studio to tell me to do this or that. And that's true with Chuck Jordan or Hank. Any of these guys, let the designers design. Management should not design, but management should be a part of picking because that's what goes into production. There's where you make or break a great car.
So besides the 1990 Fiero, which we know you had campaigned for pretty strongly to keep into production, was there anything else with the Fiero that you felt you didn't get a chance to express yourself with?
No, those two cars to me were a dream of having two unique cars on the same chassis costs. And designers should never talk about costs, right? Because you want everything. But I did believe that if you keep cost in mind, you can get more if you're smart and you listen to people, listen to the cost meeting. But the opportunity to have two unique cars off of one chassis just blew me away that we gave that up, because it's an opportunity to do things like that. It may come again, maybe someday. I don't know.
So it was the creative process for the next, what we're calling the next generation car.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had more freedoms with that vehicle than you did with the original Fiero?
Yes, because they didn't tell us it was a secretary's car to drive back to work. They said, we want you to do the right thing. But we able to do the base car. It was still exciting and smooth and nice. But then we had one that was more aggressive. So you had two personalities in the designs.
Definitely two different price points.
You got it, yeah, for sure.
And one of the biggest features of the next car was the trunk space is double.
Yes, right.
Was that a design influence from you, or was that for product demand?
It was all of us thinking together. Also, it's more tail and short nose, because that's mid-engine cars, not front engine. So you would put the emphasis in the rear, and you know, by the way, you get more space to put things.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right, Jen. Anything else on the question board? We all question out with our participants.
So we have three quick things. First, Michael Wilcher, I believe you wanted to come on and just share some gratitude for Mr. Schinella. All right, your audio does not seem to be cooperating. Maybe it is now.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you now.
Yes, John. You know, that as a child, what you had a hand over greatly affected me. And, you know, I know another person said something about the car's shape. And I think I've often said, you know, the shape of the Fiero, it was sexy before the simple, someone else said it's simple, it's clean, it's all those things. And to me, it's always been the purest form of simple beauty. And, you know, I know as an adult, I realize, you know, I think a lot of us wish we could touch other people, make their lives positively. And I just want to say, you know, your part in that project, it had a decades-long effect on this little kid. And, you know, it's often said, don't meet your heroes, but I can tell you, meeting you was more than I could have ever imagined at the 40th. You were so nice and kind to take your time and speak just plainly with me. And, you know, don't meet your heroes. They've never met you. And I just want to thank you for all you had and all you gave to that project. And I'd also like to ask, because I don't think people ever realize that what they're doing in the moment might have a lasting impact on, you know, people or individuals. Was there ever a point at which you were working on that project that you thought, was there any hindsight that, or any foreknowledge that one day this will affect people in such a positive way? And again, thank you for everything. You're just a pleasure to meet. You're a pleasure to listen to. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That was, wow. You almost got me to tears there, a little bit of excitement, because tears to me are for joy. Thank you for your expression. I always felt that our team were trying to design cars that would be that way. And let me use this analogy. I said, you know, the shapes and forms of Pontiac, and by the way, this started with Jack Humbert. When you look at the cars in the 60s, those were Jack Humbert's designs, those beautiful shapes, those Pontiacs. I mean, God, they're gorgeous today. And I always said that our shapes and forms should be more like an athletic woman, where she is lean and beautiful, like a Ferrari. And we thought that Chevrolet was more chiseled, like a man's muscle. And we tried to use that thinking in what we did. Did we achieve it all the time? No, but most of the time we did, because we felt that way, that we wanted our cars to be masculine, but they wanted to be sexy. And they wanted to be fast. They wanted to be most aerodynamic. And that was kind of our forethought. And it wasn't just John Schinella, it was the team I had. Like the Jim Shooks and the Bill Davises. And what's interesting in your expression is when I see children look at these cars at an event and their excitement is in their eyes, they're our future. They want cars like this, and to develop these cars or restore them with their mom and dad or with their brothers or whatever. So I didn't know it at the time because you're busy designing to do the best you can. But yet when you see it today, that these people, what they have to say, like you've done, I've heard this expression before. I mean, it's a great feeling that you people love what we did. And a lot of people think we're heroes, but no, you're the heroes because you brought it back alive and you love it and you talk about it. I just want to leave one last comment. The E-Jag is probably the most beautiful car ever done. It was exemplified by Pininfarina and the Ferrari people. If you look at that car, it's all about smooth and beautiful and grace. And that's kind of what we felt about our cars.
That was a great conversation. That is what we're here for. Anybody else want to add to that?
So Peter Zurich did say that he also just wanted to say it was love at first sight when I saw my first Fiero as a young teenager. It was still, to me, the most beautifully designed thing I could own. Being able to hear the designer speak to these issues, like the timeless, clean lines compared to the eccentric design features of some of the newer cars, was an amazing experience. I thank John and the crew for making this happen. It's been like getting to hear your favorite rock star explain everything behind your favorite rock song of all time. Thank you so much.
Heard that a lot, haven't you?
Yeah, I guess. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to tell you. Is we have a whole group of people that look up to you as our heroes and influencers.
Yeah, and Jeff Jones said, the impact John's had on so many people's lives is amazing. People have gotten married because of Fieros, and there's been so many friendships, and that's certainly true for all of us here.
Here's a little tidbit too. I know of women that have bought Trans Ams to catch a guy. That's a true story. I've heard that from people. That's what I had Trans Am. Yeah. So there you go.
And Eric said, thank you. He looks forward to moving in with you soon.
I think he could have a very large adopted family.
Yeah.
Very
Schinella.
It could be the Schinella B&B.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, and we do have one last question, Jason. Thank you for bringing this up, for servicing it again, because it did get lost. John, out of all of the cars that you have worked on, and there have been so many, where does the Fiero sit in your personal Hall of Fame?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Good question.
Because you did a lot of beautiful design.
Jeff says, pick your favorite child.
Yeah, see, that doesn't happen. That's not being honest. I don't know. Probably influencing the Chaparral race car was one of my big things because I got a chance to drive that mule at the proving grounds. Automatic transmission V8 race chassis. God, I was 20 some odd years old. I mean, how could you? It's like flying a jet, I guess. No, I would say working on the first Camaro is big to my heart because GM's giving up the Camaro. That really hurts. The Monaros in Australia that are collector items today with the team at that time, what we did are unbelievable. Obviously the Firebird, the Knight Rider, Mr. T van. I'm listing too many, I know. Mr. T, I did that van, and I also did the Knight Rider car. The Fiero was the last blow to me of not getting the second gen on the street, because I think we robbed the people and the participants of Pontiacs and General Motors cars by not having that second gen, period.
It was definitely a missed opportunity.
Yes.
I would have been a customer immediately.
It's funny you mentioned the Knight Rider car, because my dad won a Fiero in the fall of '84 in the Mac Again Back Again sweepstakes, and he upgraded it to a black '85 GT, and my 4-year-old self was convinced it was the Knight Rider car. And I would go out and talk to it, and it wouldn't talk back, and I would get frustrated, but still loved it anyway. And I didn't know that day in May of '85 when it came home that it was changing my life, but it really did, and became a lifelong passion with my father. So that's really cool that you have that connection. The final thing we have for you today is one of our participants here, Ken Brown, who has certainly asked many great questions. Wanted to share this photo with you and all of our participants. We can see you haven't aged at all. And
A couple days ago.
Yes, it was.
he thought that we would all love to see this image from the files. So thank you, Ken, for sharing this. And John, thank you so much for joining us this morning and for being the first of our Fieros at 40 series. Fred will be sharing some more information on who our next speaker will be soon, so stay tuned. And Pontiac Transportation Museum and Midwest Fiero Clubs, thank you for being our hosts for today's program.
Very good. Anyone on thoughts, John? You happy?
Yeah, I'm very happy. It's when I'm around this discussion about Fieros, it's the pain is that we lost that second gen, but I really enjoyed being a part of the Fiero program, and the team that worked on it was just a blessing in disguise. How often do you get the chance to do a mid-engine sports car? How many times?
Right.
Yeah.
One. And you did it.
Two. One. Did the Corvette.
Oh.
The Mule. Right. With Larry Schinella.
All right, Jen.
Thank you, gentlemen, and have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.